on a roll.
Yeah, I don't want to. I will be.
Nice shot. Hey.
This year has a different feel to it. Normally, we're late to the game when it comes to gardening, and since the bulk of what we grow are storage crops that can wait to be harvested until later in the season, we're usually okay with holding off a bit on getting our gardens prepped and planted. But this year we're adding another arrow to our quiver, so to speak. Joelle is pregnant and we're expecting our 5th baby in early October, right in the middle of harvest season. We're extra motivated to get out there early and get planting with the goal of hauling in and storing away all of those crops before this little one comes to join us. It's go time to start getting ahead of the curve and prepping anything we can.
If you were with us last year, you'll remember that we tilled up this garden space to give it sort of a reset. So this is our kitchen garden. It's close to our house, and we actually hadn't tilled it up since we initially bought our property and broke ground back in 2020. Since then, we had been relying on no-till garden methods, using tools like a broad fork or a wheel hoe to prep this garden area. But one thing we overlooked is mulch. And so while we were still getting pretty good harvests out here, we noticed with each year the weeds were getting more and more out of control, and we were spending so much time out here hand weeding. And so we want to take care of that this year, and we want to be on top of mulching to keep those weeds under control from the beginning. So our plan is to put a layer of cardboard between all of our rows and then a layer of wood mulch on top of that. And then after we plant our garden in another month or so, we plan to put a layer of straw on top of the garden rows around our plants.
Oh, it's a worm. Oh yeah, Mommy, there's a worm. Wait, there's a worm up in here.
There's gonna be lots of worms.
Yeah, I saw an earthworm.
Coming that way.
Watch out!
What's underneath it?
Move out of the way, guys! This one isn't as wet.
Alright.
It's gonna be a long one. It's cute. Ooh, lots of juices. Give it to 3 chickens. Okay.
And there's tons of these wild carrots. Okay, so we pulled off the tarp, and we've never had this many weeds before. So most of these that we're finding are these wild carrots, and so Jim's gonna go through with the wheel hoe and wheel hoe in between the rows. I'm gonna go through on top of the rows and just trying to use a little shovel here, pull out anything that we can. Hopefully nipping these in the bud now will take care of a much bigger problem that obviously we've had going on here.
Uh-oh. Get this out.
Hey guys, chickens.
A whole bunch more.
Alright, you guys want to go with me and grab all the cardboard? Alright. You guys want to leave that stick there for now and the shovel there for now?
Daddy.
Just drop them. We don't need them anymore.
I found worm too.
They do that.
Well, I know that worm works
Oh, right there. Go get the chickens.
Can I put
Yeah, put it down right there.
Now I'm not sure that we'll actually have enough cardboard to cover all of our rows, but if not, hopefully we will. If not, we'll try to track some down before we do our planting. And you wouldn't have to do the layer of cardboard. The reason that we are doing it is to add that extra barrier, kind of layer of protection to keep those weeds from potentially popping through the mulch, just to squelch them out. We've been saving up our cardboard boxes for the last few months, knowing that we wanted to use them for this. So the first thing we had to do last night when we were breaking down all of our boxes was to remove any staples, tape, packaging labels from those boxes, because we don't want to add any of that plastic or toxins to our garden, ultimately getting into our food.
Pretty awesome. All right, get to that box that you guys are playing inside of. So last year we had some tree work done around our property. There were probably 5 or 10 dead trees that we inherited when we bought the property. Those needed to come down. We also just had a lot of kind of looming tree branches over our house and our barn, so everything needed a good pruning. And the best part about getting that tree work done is that it left us with 2 giant piles of mulch at our disposal. It's mostly a mix of pine and maple, so a good mix of softwood and hardwood. It's really good mulch. The only issue is that we actually don't have a tractor right now. We picked up a nice little used Kubota tractor last summer, and as we discovered, it made projects like scooping and moving mulch around so much easier. But last fall, I actually broke our tractor, and it was bad, total rookie mistake. So I picked up this used post hole auger to drill some post holes with, and one of the first holes that I was digging, I sunk down that auger too deep into the ground, or it got caught on a root or something, and it was stuck. I couldn't pull it up for the life of me. That's when I also learned for the first time that there's not a reverse PTO option on the tractor, so you couldn't just unscrew it to pull it out, and it was totally stuck. And I had the brilliant idea at the time that maybe rocking the tractor back and forth and lifting up the rear 3-point would wiggle it free and allow it to pull up out of the ground. And so I started doing that, and after a little while I heard this loud snap, and I knew that something went horribly wrong. I had figured that the auger itself would give out before the tractor would, but I was totally wrong. So the whole back end casing of the tractor had cracked. It was a big major fix. The tractor itself was still usable, it would still drive, and I could use the bucket, but we knew this spring we needed to get it totally repaired to be ready for the growing season. So we ordered up the parts, and actually have a friend who it's in the shop with right now, and he's working on it. So hopefully we'll get it back in the next couple weeks and be ready to go for planting season ahead here. All this was a humbling and costly reminder that although we've been homesteading for several years now, there's still plenty of lessons to learn along the way, some bigger than others. All that to say, we're back to moving mulch by hand right now, and since we know that we'll have our tractor back in a few weeks, we're gonna just get enough mulch right now to cover over that cardboard and hold it down, keep it in place, and then we'll focus on wrapping up the mulch before we plant.
We want wanted to take a quick break to thank Element for sponsoring today's video. You guys, I love their products. So I've been adding salt to my water for years to replenish electrolytes, and Element makes it so easy, and it tastes way better than just adding salt to water. Electrolytes are so important in the body for facilitating hundreds of reactions like hormone regulation, nutrient absorption, and fluid balance. And Element has those electrolytes in just the right science-backed ratios. One of the things that eating processed food does do is it gives you tons of sodium and salt. And so by eliminating processed foods from my diet and also constantly being moving, like chasing kids or doing projects on our homestead, it's surprisingly easy to be depleted in that much needed sodium. I notice a huge difference in how I feel, my energy, my sleep, not getting those annoying leg cramps when I make sure to add in daily electrolytes. Element has so many great flavors. My personal favorite is citrus, and it's as easy as opening a packet, pouring it into your water, and giving it a quick stir. Right now, Element is offering our listeners a free sample pack with any order. That's 8 free single-serving packets with any Element order. This is a great way to try 8 of their flavors or share Element with a salty friend. Get yours at drinkelement.com/from scratch. This deal is only available through my link, so you must go to drinkLMNT.com/from scratch. So this is one of those garden hacks that I actually don't see very often, but it's something we do every year, and it's been really, really helpful for us. And that's putting a tarp over our garden area. And so this is just a regular heavy-duty tarp that we got at our local hardware store. We put it over our garden every fall, secure it with rocks, and what it's done for us is 3 things. So the first is that it makes a great weed barrier, killing off all of those early spring weeds. And then the second thing is that it helps to keep the garden warm and dry, which is really helpful for spring planting to be able to get in there and get in the soil. It also helps to keep it warm over the winter, which can help all the soil biology, all those earthworms, to stay warm and active. And then the third thing, which is really important to us here on our homestead, with chickens free-ranging all over our property, is that it keeps our chickens from getting into and destroying our garden beds. And so we're gonna put the tarp back onto our garden now to keep the area safe and warm and dry from our chickens and everything else until we're ready to plant in another month.
Right. Ugh. Ugh.
It was really exciting to see the garlic that we planted late last fall start popping up just in the last week or so. One of the things that I'm concerned about, though, is that we might have put our layer of straw mulch down a little bit too thick in some areas. It is nice that as I'm pulling it back, I'm seeing plenty of garlic popping up, but I'm gonna spend some time here moving around that layer of mulch, making sure it's not too thick for the garlic to pop through, but thick enough so that it does its job with the weeds. I'm hoping that I have enough organic straw left to mulch our garden areas this spring. Last fall, I tracked down 18 bales of organic straw, which can be pretty difficult to come by, and I've been using them throughout the winter for our animals, but I set aside about half of them to use for our gardens. Both oats and wheat, which are most commonly used for straw, are some of the most heavily sprayed crops out there. So if you want to keep those chemicals out of your garden, it's important to find a source that's not sprayed. The last thing I want to do in this area is a little pruning on our raspberries. Mainly just cutting back some of these gray and dried out shoots, and then also some of these really long ones that are overgrown. I sort of missed the window to get in here during the winter when these were totally dormant. They've started budding out a little bit, but we still want to clean them up a little bit to get ready for the growing season and some of that new growth that's going to be coming up. My plan really for this space is to have a whole solid layer of wood mulch down all across this garden area, all the way from our dwarf apple tree area over to our raspberry and rhubarb patch. This way we can just kind of knock out any grass here and kind of create somewhat of a barrier between the garden and the rest of our yard to hopefully just keep the weeds down altogether. But right now the priority has just been getting the mulch going in the garden.
I just wanted to talk real quick about this pregnancy. And so 5 kids sounds kind of crazy to us. This was not something that we were necessarily planning. It's not like when we got married, we dreamed of having a big family. We knew we wanted kids, but it was kind of just a one at a time sort of a thing. Jim and I actually both grew up with only one sibling, and we didn't have like a lot of friends or knew other families with large families. So this does feel pretty crazy to us, but we're also so excited. We can't wait to meet this little one and to welcome them into our family. And if there's one thing that I know that like homesteading and living this lifestyle has taught us, is just to accept and embrace the like beautiful, messy chaos that comes with it. And so that's kind of my expectations heading into this pregnancy, is like, it's going to be hard. There's going to be hard things about it, but it's also going to be beautiful. And we are so, so excited for that. We've also shared kind of our journey leading up to this point, and really how our experience with struggling to get pregnant and then miscarriage has ultimately led us to this life of homesteading and growing our own food and eating nutrient-dense foods. And so this is just something we get really, really excited about. It's actually been kind of crazy to me as I think through my pregnancies from my first to this one. And actually I would say this, like my first trimester of this pregnancy so far, has been significantly easier probably than my first trimester with my first baby, just in terms of less nausea, less food aversions, all of those things. And I think a lot of that has to do with how we've really focused and honed in that nutrition, nutrient-dense food, regular activity, all of those pieces, to where my body is hopefully just really fully nourished, and so able to kind of support this pregnancy without having a lot of those unpleasant things that can often come along with it. And so it's actually interesting. I hear a lot of women say how in their first pregnancy specifically, meat is something that they have a hard time with. For me, it's the opposite, actually. I really like meat, especially in the first trimester. It sounds really good to me. And actually for all of those instances where you're like, I need to eat something quickly right now because I'm kind of feeling like a little yucky, so getting something in my stomach would make me feel better, I turn to protein specifically in those instances. And I think that's really helped a lot. And so one of the things that I have loved making, especially in this first trimester here, has been bulk like meatballs or burgers. But what I've been doing with them is actually adding beef heart to the ground beef. So like beef heart burgers has been one of my favorite things. And the beauty of that is that I will make them in these large batches with 4 pounds of ground beef and 2 pounds of beef heart, which will make a ton of burgers that I can then freeze to have for easy meals later. And it might sound a little strange to add beef heart to your burgers, but I promise you, it tastes actually really good. If anything, I prefer burgers with the added beef heart. I think it tastes even like a little richer, but it doesn't have a ton of extra flavor. It's definitely different than like liver with a strong taste. Beef heart is very mild, and it also adds a ton of nutrients. And so heart is going to be rich in B vitamins and minerals, CoQ10 and those antioxidants. And so it's just a great way to add a ton of extra nutrition without really changing anything about how you eat. I always add heart in a 2-to-1 ratio with ground beef. So the heart that we generally use is about a 2-pound package. And so I'm gonna mix that in with 4 pounds of ground beef. And the process is not glamorous, but to do this, I just chop the heart into like 1-inch cubes, toss it all in my Vitamix blender. You could also do this with a food processor and just puree that heart up so it's, you know, smooth and creamy. And then I just pour that in with the ground beef. And this is the truly unglamorous part, but it's most efficient to just mix it with your hands. And so I add in some spices, some Worcestershire sauce, mix that up, and then form it into burger patties and just cook those up. And this 6 pounds of meat made roughly enough to have 5 full meals for our family that I can then freeze, which is awesome because you have those nights when you're busy working outside on the farm, especially as we move into planting season and growing season here, or in pregnancy, just those days where you're really tired and don't feel like cooking. It's so nice to have solid, nutrient-dense meals ready to go in the freezer. Mixing in beef heart with your ground beef also tends to be really cost effective. So after we finish all of the beef heart that we have from the cow that we got processed here on our farm, I start asking around to other local farmers I know, and typically they have it, it's not a very desirable cut, and so they're willing to give it to me for a really low price, or sometimes even give it away because they're just wanting to clear out their freezers and make room for other things. A lot of butchers too, if you request it, will just go ahead and mix all of the organ meats right into your ground beef if you're getting like a quarter or a half of beef processed. But I actually really like to do it this way where I mix it myself. Yes, it's a little bit more work. Yes, it's not very pleasant. But the reason I like to do it is because then I'm getting that significant ratio of heart to beef in there, giving me more nutrients. Otherwise, if they mix it in, yes, you're gonna get some added nutrients from that organ meat, but it's not gonna be in the same concentration as it would be if you did kind of this 2-to-1 ratio. And while I find that I crave meat, especially in the first trimester, the one thing that has always been a little tricky for me in all my pregnancies has been cooked vegetables. They just don't sound very good to me. And so the thing that I've been doing, especially during these last several weeks, has been to just try to include them in wherever I can, throw them in a casserole, throw them in things so I just don't really notice them. Yes, maybe a side of butternut squash doesn't sound great, but if I cube it up and I throw it in an enchilada casserole, I can enjoy that no problem.
And there's more.
All right, who would like some?
And beans. And chicken.
There you go.
And tortillas. If this was hot, that would be easy. I could do it like with it.
You jumped out of the pot. Would you like it?
It's sweet.
There you go.
It doesn't be.
Our other garden space is our Three Sisters garden area and orchard, and that's actually shared with the same space that we overwinter our cows in. And so first things first, we have some electric fencing separating those two spaces, so I need to go in and turn that off so I don't get shocked heading in there. Now when we trenched in new water lines and electrical last fall, I made a last minute decision to run some electric out here to this spot so that we can move our fencer to this location. So previously we had our fencer set up way on the other side of our property, closer to our house, and every winter I would run T-posts the length of our entire field over here about every 15 feet or so, and we'd have the electrical fencing wire running that length, and it was like a trip hazard and people would get caught in it with a hot wire, and that's never a good thing. So I'm so glad that we took the extra step, ran it out here, have it set up here now so we can eliminate all that extra wiring running across our whole field every winter. And we just run 2 strands of wire electric fencing between that garden area and orchard area and the paddock that our cows are in. And thankfully that's been effective. The cows haven't gotten through there, which is really good because they could do a lot of damage on those young fruit trees. The only thing I wish I would have done differently here, if I had thought of it sooner, was to also, while we had this trench running out here, to also run a water line and put a yard hydrant out here too, because I could have eliminated a lot of hoses running back and forth from our barn hydrant out here to this garden space where we usually do drip irrigation. So that's definitely a project we'll want to keep in mind for the future. Until we get our tractor back, there's not much prep work I can do out in this area. But one of the things that's been on my to-do list is to come out here and pull back the mulch that we put around the base of our fruit trees last year. So we knew that the grass growing around the base of the trees in their drip line would be robbing those fruit trees of vital nutrients that would help them grow and be productive. And so we definitely, once we had our tractor and our mulch piles, we knew we wanted to come in and put a nice layer of mulch around those trees. However, one of the things that many of you pointed out to us is to pull that mulch back so that no mulch is actually touching the base of the tree, which is something we totally overlooked. And the main reason is that mulch can trap a lot of moisture right there along the base, which could eventually lead to things like disease with your trees and even have the chance of killing them. I did a little bit of pulling the mulch back by hand last year just while I was out here, but I wanted to make sure to come out here with a shovel early this spring and pull back that mulch fully so that the trees will be ready for the growing season ahead. Since we started mulching these guys a ways into the growing season, I did roughly half of the 30 fruit trees that we have out here last year, but the rest I couldn't access with a tractor or even a wheelbarrow because a lot of our crops like our squash and sweet potatoes had started sprawling out, so they were covering the ground and I didn't want to risk getting in here with anything and damaging those crops. Once we're back up and running then with our tractor, and once we move the cows out of this space and get them grazing on our backfield, because it's really hard when they are up here to come in with a tractor load of mulch while the cows are up front still. So once they're out back, we'll definitely want to make sure to get in here this spring and finish mulching these trees. And just real quick, on some of these, you could see like here, there's a lot of grass that started growing up through the mulch. So like back in our other kitchen garden area, we put down that cardboard to block out those weeds entirely and then mulch over that. We did not do that here. We just laid the mulch directly down on top of the grass, and that's why we did that with the cardboard. And so when we come through and mulch the rest of these trees, we might save up our cardboard again and put a layer of that down first, then mulch on top of it, because there's definitely a lot of grass here starting to pop through. The other area that I wanted to try and clean up a little bit while I'm out here is our asparagus patch, which is right behind me here. And we also came through last year with some loads of mulch, mulched this whole space, and we had some issues getting all of our asparagus plants established from the start. Some of them didn't make it, but we did have a few asparagus get established, and we're hoping that if they come up strong this spring, it might be the first chance we have to actually harvest some spears of asparagus. The issue right now is actually locating where all those plants are. So our chickens come in here and have been kicking things up and spreading around the mulch all winter, and so despite our best efforts last fall to kind of pull that mulch back from the plants so that they weren't covered and smothered by the mulch, those chickens kind of just came in and spread the mulch everywhere. Since the spears haven't really started coming up yet, our plan is to right now just get in there and try and locate as many plants as we can and pull back the mulch from them, and then we have some organic fertilizer and compost to add around those plants and give them a boost of extra nutrients for the springtime here.
So there is still plenty left on our to-do list and projects to tackle as the growing season approaches. But with baby number 5 on the way, we are feeling extra motivated to get out there early, work hard, and get things growing as soon as possible. And hopefully not just growing, but thriving. It's really exciting as we head into each new growing season because it's an opportunity to learn from all of the mistakes that we've made in previous years and have a chance to improve upon them. That doesn't mean just bigger and better harvests. We're really looking forward to hopefully spending more time with our family and less time weeding.
Normally, we're late to the game when it comes to...
I got it!
All right!
Whoa.
All right. What do you got there, Clara?
Want to help? Yeah. Hey, chicken! Chicken! Chicken!